Welcome back to the Jungle Fever podcast. I'm Ethan Sargent. This is Aiden Crowley, as always. And, well, we finally have a real life game to talk about, and they're 1-0. They did it dragged, kicking, and screaming, but they're 1-0. And that is what matters. The Bengals get the victory over the Browns yesterday by the victory of 17-16. It was ugly. It was a nasty football game in
Understatement.
every sense, but the Bengals got it done, and that is what matters. There are plenty of takeaways from this matchup, both positive and negative. And we're going to break it all down. Of course, we're also going to look ahead to next week as well, but we'll focus a bit more on what we saw this week from the Bengals in this matchup, 17-16. Let's just talk about what we saw in the matchup first off. Obviously, the Bengals go down the field on their opening drive, and they look like a juggernaut. Chase Brown runs for over 30 yards on the opening drive. Joe Burrow looks poised in the pocket, dinking and dunking, nothing too crazy. They do punch it in eventually on a Chase Brown score to go up 7-0, and you're thinking, "Who boy, right? This offense is going to look good." Then the Browns had an even longer drive that I think took almost 8 minutes off the clock. They eventually punched it in. They converted, I think, three fourth downs on the drive. Um,
Helped by penalties, but yeah.
yeah, and the Bengals, yeah, and we'll talk about that. They had a lot of shooting themselves in the foot in that drive. Some ticky tack calls. I also thought on that drive. I thought there was a lot of ticky tack calls throughout this game, but that's a conversation for another point. Um, but again, they go down the field, they score, they tie it up, and it is what it is. The Bengals, I think they would be a couple punts back and forth, and then the Bengals would score another touchdown drive, what would end up being their last touchdown drive of the day. They get it down inside Browns territory. They get it into a first or second and really short to go on the goal line, and they run a really nice bootleg play action. Joe Burrow's got one of the easier touchdown passes he'll ever have to Noah Fant, the newest Bengal, in the back of the end zone. The Browns would do a little bit of a double up at the end of the half. Andre Schmidt, who of course is the story of this game, we'll talk about that later. He kicked a field goal at the end of the half to bring the Browns within three, and then the Browns would march down the field on the opening drive in the second half and score. And you're thinking, oh boy, same old script, right? You're thinking same old script, same old story. But then it kind of just devolved into the best way I can think of describing this game was a rock fight. Lot of mistakes, multiple turnovers on downs from the Browns. The key points I guess we could hit here in the second half was that the two big turnovers for the Bengals. The first one from Jordan Battle, getting a pick deep in Browns territory. The Bengals would then cash in with an Evan McPherson field goal that proved to be the difference in this game. I should go back and mention real quick after the Browns scored their touchdown, Andre Schmidt missed the extra point. So it's only a 2-point game at this point. The Bengals then kick that field goal to make it 17-16. The Bengals get that. The Browns go down the field with about 3 minutes to go. They had already turned it over on downs deep in Bengals territory on the previous drive. The Bengals offense was bad in the second half. We will get to that. But yes, seven
Seven
total
total
points.
yards.
Seven. Not great. But they get down the field about, I think, what, 2:50 on the clock when they kick this last field goal. Um, and it's about a 30, they were in the red zone. The Bengals got a sack on that third down play.
It's like a
Trey
33
Anderson,
yarder or
BJ
something.
Hill combined. BJ Hill had a great game. And Andre Schmidt missed it right. Never looked good. Looked like it was either doinking or sliding right the whole way. And it did not go through. Again, the Bengals struggle on offense. They kick it back to Cleveland again. They've got another chance. And this time it's DJ Turner who comes up with the big interception. Both interceptions were off deflections. This one was off Cedric Tillman. Turner with the heads up awareness play to catch the ball, go down. And then obviously after a really good punt by Ryan Rico, the Browns really had no realistic chance having to go 70 yards in about 20 seconds. But I know most Bengals fans still had their hearts in their mouths even in that. We've seen it all over the last couple of years. So again, anything is possible. But the Bengals do claw out a victory from the jaws of defeat, which last year it kind of felt like that was the opposite. They would claw out defeat from the jaws of victory. And Joe Burrow mentioned this in his post-game press conference about how, look, that sort of game was a game they lost a lot of times last year, and they found a way to win it. And Aiden, I'll let you kind of chime in for the first time here. The biggest point is that they found a way to get that done in that moment, and that is very valuable because at the end of the day, They could be as ugly or as pretty as you want. The Bengals could have won that game 100-0, and it would have counted the exact same as if they won it 17-16, and that's what they did.
Yeah, this is a game last year that the Bengals lose 10 times out of 10. 10 times out of 10, this is a loss. I think to the New England game, week one last year. You think
Yep,
about if Tanner Hudson holds on to that ball, Ethan, what's the final score of that one? 17
17-16.
to 16. And guess what? The Bengals are in the playoffs with that win. These matter. These games matter, especially when the AFC is getting more
By
competitive.
margins. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. The AFC is so hyper competitive. You need these wins. Was it pretty? No. Do I necessarily care? No. Because in my opinion,
But
the biggest concern was the offense. And in the long term, am I concerned about this offense getting production? No. I think Cleveland is a horrific matchup for this offense. I think they match up extremely well. They have talent at a ton of positions. Myles Garrett is a freak. And are there things that the Bengals did that, just shot themselves in the foot? Absolutely. And I expect those things to get cleaned up rather quickly. But for me, the biggest takeaway is this defense, they bent all day, but they never broke, especially when the offense put them in bad position after bad position after bad position. And you think back to that defense last year, they aren't getting those stops.
they
They
don't
aren't.
win that game.
They don't.
100%.
But again and again, they get two turnovers. They force a turnover on downs. Was it the Browns a couple drops? Maybe, but it's still a
Big
turnover on
drops. Yep.
down and a missed field goal, right? So they made Cleveland just uncomfortable near the end of the game. I thought the conditioning was great from the defensive line. All game, it kind of felt like they weren't getting enough pressure on Joe Flacco. And then near the end of the game, they started making him feel a little bit uncomfortable, moving him off his spot. And sometimes with somebody who's not as mobile, that's all it takes. So I was happy with that. I think overall, I thought Jordan Battle played solid. I thought Dax Hill was good. I thought this rushing defense that held Cleveland to just 2 yards a carry, and their longest rush of the game was 5 yards. If you
Yeah.
would have told me that going in, I mean, you have to be. I know it doesn't look good,
PFF
but you have to be
PFF
happy.
had TJ Slayton at like a 55 grade. I think that's ridiculous. I don't think
Yeah,
PFF knows how to judge good nose tackle play because I thought TJ Slayton was really good in his
yeah,
Bengals debut. Couple other quick takeaways. I mean, we can run through the stats real quick. Joe Burrow was 14 of 23 for 113 yards and a touchdown. Not
yeah.
a game that I think he will love to watch back. It doesn't matter. They won, right?
Ethan,
And
if
look,
if I
when you
sorry, I
go
was just
ahead.
gonna say if I would have told you, last week when we were recording this podcast, that Burrow was gonna throw for 113 yards and a touchdown, what like percentage would you give us of winning?
About
What percentage?
3 or 4% maybe.
Yeah,
Not a very high one. It wouldn't have gone
yeah.
above 10. So, you get that. Chase Brown had only 43 rushing yards on 21 carries. Really, after that opening drive, the Bengals kind of struggled to run the ball. The leading receiver for the Bengals was T. Higgins with 33 yards. Um, and then again, when you look at some of the other, statistics, Jordan Battle, 12 tackles, five of them were solos, and the interception, which proved to be key. Trey Hendrickson back in the sack column, he was fantastic. Had a 43.7% pass rush win rate, which is obscene. Obscene. So again, he didn't need a preseason. He didn't need any of that. He's still
Pretty
going to
good.
do his thing. Couple of other players that I thought stood out. There's a certain first round rookie that I thought looked all the part in week number one, Shamar Stewart. He didn't really show up on the stats. I don't even know if he technically recorded a stat, but we watch football with our eyes, and boy, did he make an impact. He was plugging holes. There's one clip circulating around on one of the Browns' run plays where he just throws DeJuan Jones away from him. That is strength you cannot teach. That is strength you cannot just earn either. That's again a top 1% athlete doing top 1% athlete things. So I thought Shamar Stewart was really good in his Bengals debut. Had a couple batted passes as well. The one that was called back due to a really soft penalty. And again, I thought he was good. Thought he did what he needed to do. Demetrius Knight, I thought, did a pretty good job alongside, I think, one of the players of the game for the Bengals on defense, and Logan Wilson. There were some people questioning him in this offseason, with how old he is getting and all that, but he looked like, his prime stuff. He looked like his prime type and ready to go. So I think when you look at what Logan Wilson was able to do and you look at what Demetrius Knight was able to do, love what I saw from them. And then again, the young players in the secondary, we could probably start transitioning to the bad here because there's one player I'm going to highlight in terms of the bad. I thought DJ Turner was really good. He actually had the third, I believe, according to the PFF stats, had the third lowest separation rate in the league this past week, which is really, really good. Encouraging to see from him. Obviously, had the key interception. I thought Dax Hill was really good. He recorded a 78.5 PFF grade, which is the highest of his career. He had snaps almost everywhere on the field. The majority of his snaps were in the nickel spot, but he did have snaps at outside safety. He had at outside corner. He had 3 snaps at free safety. He even had 2 snaps on the defensive line. So they're going to put this guy wherever, right? And remember, when we all first drafted Dax Hill back in 2022, that was all the talk of, well, he can kind of play anywhere, right? They're clearly Al Golden is emphasizing that in 2025, and that adds a whole new dimension to this defense if they can get the best out of Dax Hill. But now we'll transition into some of the things that didn't go right for the Bengals, and I think you have to focus on the outside cornerback position. And Cam Taylor-Britt really struggled once again in this matchup. Recorded a 33.5 PFF grade, which was actually the lowest recorded grade on the Bengals defense. Allowed a number of catches to both Jerry Jeudy, Cedric Tillman, even Harold Fannin, the tight end for the Browns, got involved a number of times. It feels mental now at this point for him. Like he's leaving little things to too much. Like that they're breaking inside and he's still sitting off. He's making little mistakes that we weren't seeing from him the first couple of seasons he was in the league. And, it's concerning. It's a major concern. And I think he's in danger of losing his starting spot.
Yeah, the most damning play for me was that Jerry Jeudy out route that eventually led down to that missed field goal.
Yeah, I
But
know what you're talking
that
about.
was a
Yep.
huge catch, huge conversion in CTB one-on-one. And he even said post game, he was like, I was playing the wrong leverage. And B, I never flipped my hips. He was playing inside leverage on Judy, who got just an easy out route, easy catch. And those are situations, and it's frustrating. Because yes, were the Browns all game just kind of dinking and dunking their way down the field? Yes, they were. And for a certain extent, I mean, that's pretty good because last year the Bengals' biggest problem on defense was the big play. They didn't let big plays happen this game. But unfortunately, CTB kind of got exposed in some of that. And like you mentioned, it was just kind of the quick stuff, the quick slants, the quick outs. He
Yep.
just wasn't really in the right positions. It felt like only one tackle on the day as well. So just overall, just a very forgettable game for Cam Taylor-Britt, and you hope that eventually he kind of finds himself back to where he was. You think back to that Bills playoff game where he just had all the swagger, all the confidence in the world, and you hope maybe just one big play kind of gets him back in that mindset. Because I agree with you, I think he has all the physical attributes and the athleticism to be great. It feels like half the time he's either not recognizing the situation and he's kind of in the wrong spot, or he's just not trusting himself enough. It's kind of sad to see a little bit.
Yeah, and the biggest thing for me, like Josh Newton has been good when he's played. Like I wouldn't be surprised if Newton starts next week. Like
I'd be
I,
surprised if he starts.
you know, yes, on one hand, but
Maybe.
if like you think about next weekend, we'll talk about the Jags at the end of the end of the show. But like again, the Bengals play, a good wide receiver core. You got a young, flashy rookie in Travis Hunter. You've got Brian Thomas Jr. You got Trevor Lawrence, new offensive scheme. So it's very different look for the Jaguars, and they got the win in week one, right? So you have to, you're gonna have to have good secondary play once again to beat the Jags. So when you look at what the Bengals have been able to do, a lot of their success defensively, especially in that game against Cleveland, came because they did not allow the big play, right? And I'm glad you emphasized that because I thought that was one of the biggest keys to the Bengals getting the win was, yes, Flacco, he threw the ball 45 times, by the way, Joe Flacco, 31 of 45 for 290 yards. Again, when you throw the ball 45 times and you only have 290 yards, it tells me a couple of things. Um, Number one, that they couldn't run the ball. You mentioned that earlier. The Bengals did so well against the run, way better than I would have expected.
Yeah.
Number two, right? The game plan for Cleveland was extremely vanilla, right? It was not this multi-layered. The game plan was very simple. It was we're gonna try and run the ball, and if that doesn't work, which it didn't, we're gonna check it down. We're gonna keep it simple. There was a lot of swing passes, a lot of screens. You know, I don't think Joe Flacco, besides maybe a couple of the deeper out routes, don't think he threw the ball more than 15 yards down the field, maybe three times, four times, maybe. It wasn't a lot, right? Because the Bengals, I thought, did a really good job of that contain. It was something that Al Golden did a really good job of at Notre Dame, I thought, and you saw it this time, was where they keep, you'll allow that sustained touchdown drive at times, which of course you don't like, but it also took 9.5 minutes for the Browns to score multiple times. So sometimes the ball will bounce your way and they won't get a couple of those fourth downs. And they'll get a drop like it did
Yep.
towards the end of that game with the two key drops with Fannin and Judy back to back. So again, if I'm a Browns fan, right, I'm kicking myself because they, had every chance to win this game and they threw it away. It kind of feels like how we felt, a number of games last year where, it was right there, right? They had their chances. Yeah, the kicker messed up, but even outside of that, right? The two interceptions were off of drops, both of them.
Yeah,
Stillman kind of,
Yeah.
yeah.
Zach Taylor said it at the end of the game at his press conference. You have a divisional opponent. You have Cleveland out of all the divisional opponents, who we play the worst, on the road, week one. And if they want to give it to you, you got to take it. I mean, this is a league where you got to take your wins when you can get them. And if Cleveland wants to hand it to you, take it by all means. I mean, we got dominated, I think, in this game, especially on offense. Burrow and Brown and them just couldn't figure out how to move the ball. I mean, 7 net yards in the second half, and you still win a
Hmm.
football game is ridiculous.
I
It's
think
just
it's the
the most
lowest.
Cleveland way to lose a
I think it's
game.
the lowest yards and a half by a team in like 30 years. Something like that. I saw that earlier today. It's the lowest, by far the lowest and a half for a winning team, I think ever. Um, but
Yeah.
again, testament to the defense. Dan Orlovsky made a great point on Get Up today. This clip circulated around a lot. You got Rex Ryan, of course, moving the goalposts, which shocker, he loves to do that. Saying, "Oh, I'm a little worried about the Bengals." Dan Orlovsky says, "No, I'm not. In fact, I'm ecstatic because we know this offense will be fine, right? They're going to play teams. They're going to put up 30 plus points at some point this year, probably multiple times, right? It could happen next week. Who knows? But the defense playing as well as it did and showing that means that this team's floor is a lot higher, maybe, than a lot of people expected, right? Because if that defense can play at that level on a consistent basis, they're going to win some games defensively. Look, you think back to that Super Bowl year. Think about how many times the defense came up with clutch plays late when the offense came up short, right? Yes, this offense is the strength of this team. There's no doubt in that. But if the defense can come up with those key plays like it did this week, right? They could go on the run just like they did in 2021. There are an eerie amount of similarities, I thought, between that
Well,
team and
what
this team. I honestly think this team might, be more refined offensively and a bit more raw defensively than that team. But again, when you look at the way things go, and if they could get this offense going, I mean, there's no telling, right? And at the end of the day, like I said at the end of this, or right at the beginning of the show, they could have won this game 500 to nothing. They could have scored a touchdown on every play from scrimmage, right? And guess what the record would have been? 1-0, right?
Yep.
They won this game, could have won this game 2-0 on a safety. 1-0, right?
Yeah.
It
It's
does not matter.
when's the last time the Bengals started 1-0?
2021.
2021. That was pretty good for us. Listen, and the only part that was somewhat concerning for me on the offense, they'll figure it out. They'll be fine. Some of the situational stuff, and I'm going to chalk this up to just it being week one, but some of the situational stuff was mind-numbing. Three timeouts because they can't get a play call in, or there's miscommunication. Taylor said after the game that all three of those plays were three different situations. But you just can't have those in close games. You can't be burning timeouts in that way. When the defense gives you the ball back and you got a chance to go down and win the game, to get sacked on three straight plays is crazy. Taylor took some ownership of that, especially on the third down, trying to call a deep pass when they're backed up to, I think, whatever it was, like their 4 yard line, their 7 yard line, somewhere around there. So some of that stuff is like, that's not great. Not great situational
The
awareness. But I think
communication
week one.
issues
It's
also
week
just
one.
have to stop, right?
Right.
And this is not just a week one problem. We have seen this a few times where it takes the play way too long to come down from the box. And you saw there was one point in the first half where Burrow is literally going like this. He's like, give me the
Let's
play, give me
go.
the play. This was off of a kickoff. This was
Hmm.
off of a kickoff.
Yeah.
He's
So,
waiting. He wants to go. And now there's 20 seconds on the play clock, and Burrow wants as much time on the play clock as possible. I noticed this a lot. There was a lot of chest matching at the line of scrimmage on that side of the football. Burrow did a lot at the line in this game, like more than I think I've ever seen him do. He was moving dudes everywhere,
yeah.
right? And
When you got
again,
Miles Garrett on the other side, you
right.
got
He's playing, really, he's playing a chess match, not against Miles Garrett, but against Jim Schwartz, right?
right.
The Browns defense coordinator, who I think is one of the best in the game, right? Because he's so good at scheming. And there's a reason why, like you said, the Browns usually have Burrow's number because he could sit, they know how to contain the weapons. They bracket guys on the outside. They make it tough for Jamar Chase to get open, which they did. Jamar Chase only had 25 yards, I think, in this game.
Good catches.
T. Higgins led the way with 33. Not a ton of production, right? But they did what they needed to do defensively.
And they'll be fine.
And again, when they do it, and going back to the original point, when they do as much as they do at the line of scrimmage, right? You need to have 20 seconds when you break that huddle, right? Because he'll want to ID the mic. He'll want to slide the protection. He'll want to figure out what's going on defensively. They do a lot of hard counts so that he can see where guys move, right? All of that takes 10, 15 seconds at the line. They usually don't snap the ball until there's 5 or less seconds on the play clock. That means the play has to be in early. And these are things that, of course, the Bengal staff knows, but it keeps happening. It did not. That wasn't the only time this happened in this game. They had to call multiple timeouts because the play took too long to get in. Three of them. It's inexcusable. That just can't happen.
Right.
So
Right.
maybe it'll be better next week when they're at home, right? Home confines, home crowd, right? There hopefully won't be as many communication issues. Should be a great crowd at Paycor next weekend. You know, in theory, you
They'll
expect
be
a
fine.
lot of that to fix itself.
Yeah. They'll be fine. Offensively, they'll be fine. I just, again, I think the takeaway is overall positive in this
Oh,
game. Like,
absolutely.
I know you were gifted it, but you're 1-0 again
Look,
at the
they
end.
lose that game last. I said this a few times. They lose that game last year. They could play it 100 times with the 2024 team. They lose it all 100, right? They
Yeah,
just don't win that game with last year's team. They don't.
I agree.
Even late in the season, I don't know if they win that game.
I
And
agree.
they did what they needed to do, and for all, and like I've seen it already today on all these talk shows, they're moving the goalposts, right? They're saying, "Oh, but Burrow didn't play well. Oh, but they only won by one against the supposed to be terrible Browns team." I do not give two beeps. I could not care less, right? They won the game. That's been the issue, right? The offense played pretty well against Pittsburgh a couple of years ago. Did it matter? No, they lost the game,
Right.
right?
And the whole
It,
start pass narrative is kind of crazy to me as well because I mean the offense scored on two of the out of their first three possessions to start the game. Now they couldn't sustain it, and that's the issue. But it's not like
Sports
they
made great second half adjustments, clearly,
right,
right? They
right.
they, they changed
But
some
it's not
stuff.
like they came out and sputtered out of the gate. Like that first drive was dominating.
Yep,
So again, I'm not worried at all about this offense. I think this next week will be a big bounce back spot for them. And if the
yep.
defense can continue to, play well enough like they did and get those timely stops, this team has a really high ceiling.
They do. They do. And look, if you can play at that level, right, you can do a lot of really good things, right? And the goal first and foremost, I think, for this team is to just get back to the postseason, right? Give yourself a
Right.
chance, right? And I think, if they continue to play that way on the defensive side of the ball, the offense will catch back up, and they're going to be a playoff team if they play like that. So we'll see how things go. We'll take a quick look around the division now. Obviously, there's two other games we got to talk about. Both were probably the two best games of the weekend, and
I was
the
gonna
the
say
last
that.
one was the best game of the weekend pretty easily. The Steelers did get a dramatic victory in New York against the Jets, 34-32. Aaron Rodgers looked pretty good.
He did.
Threw for four
Patrick
touchdown
Mahomes.
passes. I thought Arthur Smith schemed this game really well. A lot of people were saying that honestly, Rodgers benefited a lot from the scheme. I'm not going to say that because that's kind of
He can
unfair, I
sling
think,
it
to
still, dude.
sure, but like the Jets kind of threw this game away early in the fourth quarter. The Steelers score, and then on the ensuing kickoff, the Jets fumble it right back to Pittsburgh. They score again. They take the lead. The Jets had a two-score lead up until that point. And then Chris Boswell. I mean, this guy is a absolute machine. 60-yard field goal. It was good from 75. Just
Mike
a
Tomlin called him a killer post game. He's like,
He
this is
is. He's right. He is a stone cold killer, right? There aren't many of those in the NFL anymore, right? Justin Tucker used to be one of them. Now he's out of the league. You know, there's you know, but Chris Boswell's in that echelon, right? He murders the Bengals every time he plays them. He never misses a kick. Um, and they find a way to win, right? I thought the Jets played pretty well. Justin Fields looked pretty good. But they just came up short when it mattered, right? And again, same adage, right? I'm going to talk about that in a
similar to
second, right?
divine.
They're 1-0, and that's what matters to the Steelers. The Ravens are 0-1, and they threw this one away. No question about it.
Didn't that Baltimore game feel so much like watching a Bengals game
Yep.
last year?
Exactly. It felt exactly like watching a 2024 Bengals game. I'm sat on my couch still in my Burrow jersey, and I'm like, wow, this feels really familiar. Well, because the Ravens were up 41 to 25 with 4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, or excuse me, 40 to 25 with
Mhm.
4 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and they lose the game 41 to 40. This game had a little bit of everything. Derrick Henry, with the exception of one key mistake, was absolutely phenomenal. Lamar Jackson did what he does. Zay Flowers led the NFL in receiving yards this week.
143.
Yeah, really good stuff from him and from the Ravens offense, who looked pretty unstoppable, right? But the Bills just kind of hung in this game all the way through, right? Always stayed kind of a half step behind. Um, they missed so what happens, right? They go down and score after it kind of seemed like almost a death punch knockout by Henry scoring another touchdown. Um, Buffalo goes down the field and scores on a weird play. They got a flick off of there was a fourth down. They got a ball off the hands of Dawson Knox, finds its way to Keon Coleman. They score the touchdown there. They go for or no, they didn't go for two this one. They kicked the extra point. Then I believe on the ensuing possession, Derrick Henry fumbles. Ed Oliver, by the way, absolutely phenomenal game on the interior for Buffalo. He fumbles the ball, picked up by Buffalo. They go down the field, they score. They go for two, and this time they don't get it. So it's 40 to 38. I'm gonna do a quick sidebar here about some of the decision making that John Harbaugh does in this game because it's exactly why I think he gets all the narratives that he gets about not being able to close out games because I think he did it to himself. You get into what was it? It was a third and long situation. It was a third and 8, third and 9. Throw the ball, it's a catch. It's about a fourth and 1, fourth and 2. Caught the ball in bounds. Buffalo uses their final timeout. What do you think, Aiden? I'll ask you this first. What would you do in this situation? I will set the scene for you here. This is a game with currently at this point in the matchup 79 combined points between the two squads, right? Your quarterback is one of, if not the best in the NFL in Lamar Jackson. You've got a running back in Derrick Henry who is a bulldozer, never gets tackled on first contact. You've got an offensive line that I thought played pretty dang well, right? Or you could punt it away to the reigning NFL MVP in Josh Allen, who has just led multiple touchdown drives and trust your defense, which has been shredded like Swiss cheese all night long. What would you do, Aiden? Let me know.
I'd go for it again. Like Lamar is Lamar. Like I want the ball in his hands in those situations. I want him to go win it for me. You know what I mean? I would coach to win the game when I have somebody like that. That's some of my biggest gripes with Zach Taylor at times. It feels like half the time he doesn't coach with Joe Burrow as his quarterback and Jamar Chase as a receiver.
Happened a
Like
lot this weekend.
you have these weapons, go do it. And so that was a confusing decision, but and it bit them in the butt. So
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's a game gained on the Ravens in September, which who knows how important that
great.
could prove to be. But right now, right, the Bengals and Steelers are tied atop the division at 1-0, and the Browns and Ravens are sitting at the bottom at 0-1. And really, that's the only stat that really matters at the end of the day. You can break down whatever you want to break down. Um, so that's what the division was up to. Let's look ahead to next week now. The Bengals home opener, it'll be rowdy at Paycor Stadium. The 1-0 Bengals, for the first time in 4 years, will come home to Paycor Stadium to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars, the new look Jags, who did get a victory of their own in week number 1. This game was weird, by the way. They played against the Panthers, had a long and lengthy weather delay in this matchup that pushed it way back. Um, but they did end up getting the victory 26-10. Really, the defense did a really good job of limiting Bryce Young. Bryce Young only had 154 passing yards, two interceptions for him. They also limited the run game. Chuba Hubbard only had 57 yards on the ground. So, again, that is a concern. But I think the Bengals, for the other thing to keep an eye on, is how well the Jags ran the football. Travis Etienne Jr., 16 carries for 143 yards, right?
Yeah.
That's not something I don't think anybody expected, right?
A lot of
Um,
that came on one play, but still, yeah,
yes, yeah, he did
explosive.
have
But
one big run, but still, right, the Bengals did not allow a lot of those at all last week, so that'll be something to key in on. Continuing, Trevor Lawrence, nothing too crazy, 178 yards, a touchdown, a pick. It was a really nice pick by J.C. Horn. But
he's so
again,
good.
they'll try and do that. And again, the Jags kind of just controlled this game, even with the weather delay. I think they went into the weather delay right off a touchdown. So it was like 10-3, and then they went. It was lightning in the area, so they went to the locker room. Um, but I think the big keys for this game for the Bengals, I don't think the defensive game plan needs to change a whole lot, right? I think this might be a similar, maybe a little bit better of an offensive line than the one that they played last week. If you got to try and attack it, I think a little bit more consistent pressure maybe is something that they could try and key in on, especially with what we saw in last week, especially early in the game. They couldn't really get much pressure. They did later in the game, which proved to be obviously the important one. And then I think on the offensive side of the football, I think it'll be interesting to see how they scheme things defensively, the Jags. I didn't watch this full game. I don't really know what they did defensively to slow down Bryce Young. But it's going to be important to try and I think get the offense back to a spot where you feel confident in it again, right? Which again, it'll happen. You'd love for it to happen next week, right? Make everything clicks and you're feeling great week two as opposed to like week nine as it usually is. So,
Right.
I think again it's a winnable game, right?
Oh,
And the
absolutely. Yeah. I think,
percentage of teams
sorry.
that 2-0, the percentage of teams that go 2-0, I believe it's like an 85% chance to make the postseason. Something along those lines. Right? 1-1 is right around 50-50. 0-2 is like you go down to like 20%, right? That is, thank God, out of the equation for the Bengals this year. We don't have to hear that dreaded number again.
Yeah, we know
But
that too well.
if they go 2-0, you're feeling amazing, right?
Yeah,
You're
no,
feeling on top
absolutely.
of the world. And maybe who knows how it comes next week. Again, they could win it 3-0. They could win it 55-52, right? They all count the same on the scoreboard.
Yeah, I think Jacksonville doesn't necessarily have well, I know that they don't have the same defensive talent that the Browns do, so I don't think they scare you as much in that regard. I think the offensive line is going to be a big deal in this one. The Jacksonville does have some talent on the defensive line. The health of Lucas Patrick is kind of a question mark. Will it be Dalton Reisner next week? I thought Dalton Reisner stepped in
He
and
was
played
phenomenal.
phenomenal
So good.
despite that injury. So that's my biggest question mark offensively. I think Jamar, I think T, I think those guys get going in this one. And then defensively, like you mentioned, I think it's just limiting the big plays. Like Jacksonville, they have weapons. I mean, Travis Etienne, obviously, it still has his ability to make a big play. Tank Bigsby, I think, is a good change of pace back compared to Travis Etienne as well. I thought that Brian Thomas Jr. was extremely quiet against Carolina. He's going to be looking to have a big game. He only had one catch for 11 yards. Travis Hunter, freak, 6 catches. I mean, he played a majority of the offensive snaps, which I thought
Yeah,
was
that's kind of
interesting.
what we're expecting to see from Travis Hunter,
Right.
right? I think it's going to be more offense than defense. There might be, again, the question was how much defense. I think he played a little bit of defense in this game. I don't expect him to play a boatload of defense. I think, especially against a team like Cincinnati, where you have so much talent on the outside, I don't think they'll want to give Travis Hunter those assignments this early in his NFL career.
Right.
Um,
But
again,
the point is they have playmakers. Like they have playmakers on
yeah.
offense.
Brian
I think
Thomas Jr. had actually had I thought a little bit of a rough game. He
it
had
was
some
one catch,
drops.
11 yards.
Yeah,
Yeah.
only the one catch. He did have the touchdown on the end around, which again for some fantasy owners out there probably saved his fantasy output. But aside from that, he was pretty quiet. Brenton Strange, the tight end, actually led them in receiving yards with 55. So, their production covered a lot of different ways. Liam Cohen is a very, very smart offensive mind. He's gotten the best out of a lot of people offensively. You look at what Baker's able to do in Tampa the last couple of years. So again, they have to be wary of what's coming on that side of the ball. But I think on the defensive side, I guess for the Jags, offensively for the Bengals, I think they'll look a little bit more like the team we're used to seeing next week. I just
Absolutely.
think going back to the Browns, I just think Jim Schwartz is Burrow's number. I really truly think that that's what it is at this point. I think Burrow. I also don't think Burrow particularly enjoys playing in Cleveland. I think
No.
that that's also part of it mentally, right? And I know we have some Browns fans out there that will probably would love to clip that and love to have me saying that, but it's true. Like I don't, I think if Burrow could pick one stadium to not play at every year, it would probably be Cleveland Browns Stadium. Um, but again, I think when you look at that and you look at that, I think it sets up for a Bengals win. So then I guess to wrap things up here, I'll toss it over to you. We both went 1-0 last week with picking the Bengals. Who we going this week?
I think we started out 2-0. I do. I got the Bengals. I think they make it a little bit more comfortable for us this week. I don't, I might be going out on a limb and saying that, but who knows? I think the offense figures it out. I'm gonna go Bengals 28. I'll go Jags 17.
That's very close to what I was going to go. I have the Bengals scoring the same amount of points. I have them with 28. I think the Jags score a little bit more. I'm going to go 20. So I think it'll be 28 to 20 Bengals. I think it'll be a late. I do think the comfortability will be there a little bit more. I think a late Jag score might make this score a little bit closer than maybe it appears.
Yeah.
But again, I think the Bengals will look a little bit more like a complete team this week, and that's a scary thought if they're looking this good and this complete or this early in the year. And as we very well know, Joe
I
Burrow only
think
gets better as the
re
season goes on.
real quick, just looking at the schedule with the Bengals, I know we don't have a ton of time, but just with Minnesota and Denver and Detroit looming, I think if you can get through the first 4 weeks and you're 2-2, you feel good. If you're 3-1 for through those first 4 weeks, you're feeling really, really good. So
Hey, Detroit did not look good yesterday. And to be honest, neither did Denver. Denver got the win, right? But they kind of did it in spite of some real bad Bo Nix mistakes. Detroit looked really rough. They struggled on that offensive line. Again, great Packers D line. Obviously, add Micah Parsons to that mix. But Detroit looked rough. The interior of that line is in trouble. Um, and again, with that home, it could be a winnable game. And then Minnesota, we haven't seen yet. We'll see them tonight on Monday Night Football against the Bears. So we'll kind of see what JJ McCarthy looks like in some real NFL action. And we'll talk a little bit more about that one next week.
yeah, absolutely. But I just think if you're 2-2, 3-1 through 4 weeks, you're feeling good about where you're at.
Yeah, and again, they don't have a divisional game again until the Steelers in week 7. So you're trying to get to that in a good spot. So that'll do it for this edition of the Jungle Fever podcast. The Bengals will want to know, and that makes both of us very happy. Hopefully, we're talking to y'all next week after a 2-0 start. We will catch you after the Jaguars matchup in week number 2. Talk to you then, everybody.